Remember last time when, well, we were talking about how amazing it would be if, AI could actually use computers instead of just talking about them?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It seems like Anthropic was listening because their Claude model can now actually do just that.
Yeah, it's really like something out of science fiction when you think about it. Looking at screens, using a mouse, typing. It seems like they've actually given AI, hands to interact with the digital world.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? And the crazy part is this isn't just like a futuristic concept. It's already being tested by some pretty big names like Asana and Canva. Just imagine for a second your design software creating an entire campaign from just a few prompts.
And that's just the beginning. Anthropic has also launched, get this, an upgraded Claude model, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and a brand new one they're calling Claude 3.5 Haiku.
Okay, I have to admit I laughed a little at the names. Sonnet, Haiku. What's next? Are they going to come out with like a limerick model?
Maybe a ballad next. But putting the jokes aside, the important thing here is what these models can actually do. And that's exactly what we are diving into today. We're going to be exploring each model's unique capabilities and, how they stack up against one another. You ready for this?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's start with Claude 3.5 Sonnet.
Yeah.
It sounds like Anthropic really put it through coding boot camp or something.
They did. They really did. This model is laser focused on agentic coding. So basically writing code that can interact with systems, things like automating complex tasks.
And it's not all talk either. The results are honestly pretty amazing. They used a standardized coding test called SWE Bench Verified, which evaluates how well a model understands and can apply coding knowledge. And Claude 3.5 Sonnet went from a decent 33.4% to a, wait for it, 49%.
And just to really let that sink in, that's a higher score than what OpenAI's model got, and even higher than models that were designed specifically for coding. It's kind of like if someone who just learned the alphabet suddenly wrote, like, a whole novel. This leap in ability that we're seeing has huge implications for, software development. Actually, platforms like GitLab are already using Sonnet to streamline their workflow and automate those more complicated tasks.
Wow. So we're talking about AI that can understand and write code that functions in the real world, not just in some controlled test environment.
Precisely. It's not just about writing code in isolation. It's about being able to understand how to use it in different situations. They tested Sonnet on things like managing retail systems and even booking flights, and the results were shockingly good.
So theoretically, Sonnet could do your online shopping for you or even plan your next vacation. I don't know about you, but that's kind of amazing and also a little scary at the same time.
In a way, yes. And that's where this whole idea of tool use comes into play. You see, Sonnet can determine which tools are needed for a specific task, whether it's a specific API or a coding library, and then use them effectively.
It's like they've taken AI from knowing about ingredients to actually being able to cook a 5-course meal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Sonnet, the meticulous coder, but what about this new Claude 3.5 Haiku? What's the deal with that?
Okay, so if Sonnet is our meticulous chef, right, then Haiku is like the culinary genius who can whip up something incredible, like wicked fast. It's all about speed and maximum efficiency. You know those cooking competition shows where they're given a limited amount of time to create some masterpiece?
Yeah.
That's what Haiku is like.
So it's basically the express lane for AI tasks.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Even though Haiku is designed for pure speed, it's still incredibly powerful. You ready for this? It actually outperforms Claude 3 Opus, which was Anthropic's previous top-performing model, on several benchmark tests.
Wait, so you're telling me smaller is actually better?
Well, in some cases, yes. It really all comes down to finding that sweet spot between power and efficiency.
Okay, I get it. So where does Haiku really, shine? What kind of tasks is it best suited for?
Think of any task that needs a quick turnaround time, like chatbots, for example. Haiku can process information and then formulate responses much faster than other models, which leads to a much smoother user experience.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, nobody wants to be stuck waiting forever for a chatbot to respond.
You got it. And it's not limited to just chatbots. Any task that involves, going through a ton of data to find those key insights could benefit from Haiku's speed. It could be huge for researchers or analysts, anyone who needs to process information quickly.
Okay, so we've got these two distinct models now, each with its own strengths. But I want to circle back to that big news we talked about earlier, Claude's ability to actually use computers like we do.
Yeah.
How did they even do that? That's like teaching a dog to, walk on 2 legs.
It might seem that way, But their approach was really smart. Instead of trying to create a specific tool for every single computer task imaginable, they went with a more generalized approach.
Okay, now you've got me really curious. Break it down for me.
So imagine, instead of teaching someone how to use every single program individually, you instead just teach them the basics of how a computer works. You know, how to use a mouse, a keyboard, how to navigate a basic interface.
Right, so you're basically giving them the foundation to figure out the rest.
Exactly. Anthropic created what's called an API, which basically acts like a bridge between Claude's AI and the computer interface. This allows Claude to take instructions like click that button or fill out this form and translate them into actual actions on a computer.
So it's not just about understanding the instructions, it's about understanding how those instructions translate into actions on the screen. That's pretty incredible.
It is. It's honestly a whole other level of comprehension and interaction than anything we've seen before with AI.
You know, this is all completely fascinating, but I have to be honest, it's a little terrifying too.
I hear you. It's definitely a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about all the potential of AI for years, but this feels different. Like we're going from theory to reality incredibly fast.
It's definitely a pivotal moment in AI development. There's no doubt about that. And it really makes you wonder, what's next?
Right. If AI can use the tools we've already created, how long until it starts designing even better tools? You know, tools that could change entire industries or even solve some of the biggest problems in the world.
It's definitely possible. Just imagine AI working alongside scientists to create new medical treatments or collaborating with engineers on sustainable energy solutions. The positive impact could be enormous.
But we also have to address the elephant in the room, right? With any new technology, especially one as powerful as this, there are always concerns. I mean, we've all seen enough sci-fi movies to know that giving AI too much control can have some pretty serious consequences.
It's true. We need to be incredibly careful here. Luckily, Anthropic seems to be taking this seriously by releasing the technology in these stages and really emphasizing ethical development.
Yeah, they talk about building in safeguards. What exactly does that mean? How do those safeguards work?
Basically, they are developing what they're calling classifiers, which are designed to detect if someone is trying to use Claude for malicious purposes, like spreading misinformation or carrying out cyber attacks.
So it's like an AI watchdog that keeps an eye on, well, other AIs. That's honestly a little reassuring.
It's kind of like a digital arms race where the fate of humanity hangs in the balance.
Okay, maybe I'm being a tad dramatic, but you have to admit this is a lot to process.
It really is. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. As of right now, this technology is mainly in the hands of developers who are still trying to understand its capabilities and limitations. I think the most important thing right now is that we have these open and honest conversations about the benefits and risks of AI as it evolves.
Absolutely. We need to be asking the tough questions, demanding transparency from the companies developing this technology. What happens if something goes wrong? How do we make sure that AI is used for good and not to harm others?
That's right. And these aren't just questions for the developers, but for everyone.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. The choices that we make right now about how we develop and use AI will have a tremendous impact on the future.
No doubt. And it's not just about the technology itself, but about the values that we embed in it. Are we going to use AI to create a more equitable and sustainable world, or will it just make existing inequalities even worse?
Those are some pretty heavy questions, but they are important. And I'm not going to lie, it is a bit overwhelming. It's like trying to predict the weather a year from now. There are just too many factors.
It's definitely complex, but I think that's exactly why it's crucial that we as a society engage in these conversations now and demand that AI development aligns with their values.
It's not just about what AI can do, but about what we want it to do.
Yeah.
And that all starts with, understanding the technology, which is why we're here today.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, or at least that's how the saying goes. The better we understand AI, its potential, and of course its limitations, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this whole new world.
Very well said. And speaking of navigating new worlds, let's get back to the specifics of Claude's computer-using abilities. I know we briefly touched upon how Anthropic achieved this breakthrough using a special API, but what about the practical implications of all this? What does it mean for us?
Now that is where things get really interesting. Let's do a quick recap here.
Sounds good.
We've got Claude 3.5 Sonnet, a coding powerhouse that has really raised the bar in terms of AI's ability to actually understand and apply coding knowledge. I mean, the fact that companies like GitLab are already using it to automate complex development tasks should tell you something.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And then we've got Claude 3.5 Haiku, the speed demon that's all about efficiency, which makes it perfect for things like those chatbots we talked about,
Yeah.
or really any other task where you need quick responses and data processing. It's almost like having your own little AI assistant working behind the scenes.
Right, exactly. And of course, let's not forget the most groundbreaking development here, the fact that Claude can now actually use computers like we do. Anthropic created this special API that allows it to interact with the digital world, using a mouse and keyboard, navigating those complex interfaces. It's really like they've given this digital entity a physical presence in the digital world.
It's honestly mind-blowing, and I have to admit, just a little bit unnerving. We've talked about the potential of AI so much, but this feels different, like we're moving from theory to reality really, really fast.
It's definitely a pivotal moment in the development of AI. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And it really makes you stop and think, what is next? What comes after this?
Exactly. If AI can already use the tools that we use every day, how long will it be before it starts designing even better tools? Tools that we haven't even thought of yet. Tools that could change entire industries or even help us solve some of the biggest problems in the world.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility. I mean, just imagine for a second AI working with scientists to develop groundbreaking medical treatments or partnering with engineers to come up with sustainable energy solutions. The potential for positive impact is really huge.
But we also have to be realistic, right? With any new technology, especially one with this much power, there are always concerns. I mean, we all know what happens when you give AI a little too much control. Let's just say it doesn't always end well.
That's definitely true. We can't afford to be naive about the risks here. We have to be extremely cautious moving forward. The good news is that Anthropic seems to be aware of these risks. I mean, they're releasing the technology slowly, in stages, and they keep stressing the importance of ethical development.
Yeah, and they did mention building in safeguards. So how do those work? What are we talking about here?
So they're working on these things called classifiers. They're basically designed to detect if someone's trying to use Claude for malicious purposes, things like spreading misinformation or launching cyber attacks.
So it's kind of like we're talking about an AI watchdog whose sole job is to, well, keep an eye on the other AIs. That makes me feel a little better, I have to say.
It's a never-ending game of cat and mouse, though. As AI gets smarter, so do the people trying to exploit it.
Right, a digital arms race with, like, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic here.
No, maybe just a little. But yeah, it's definitely a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is.
I think the most important thing right now is that we keep having these open, honest discussions about both the potential benefits and the risks of AI as this technology continues to evolve. We can't just bury our heads in the sand.
I totally agree. We need to keep asking the tough questions, demanding more transparency from the companies that are developing this technology. Like, for example, what happens if something goes wrong? How can we be sure that AI is going to be used for good and not, for harming others?
You're exactly right. And those are questions for everyone, not just the developers. This is something that affects all of us.
It really feels like we're at a pivotal moment in history, wouldn't you say? The choices we make right now about how we go about developing and using AI are going to have huge consequences down the line.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just about the technology, it's about the values that we embed within it. Will we use AI to create a better world or more equitable, sustainable world? Or will it end up making existing inequalities worse? That's the big question.
It's a lot to process, I'm not going to lie. It's almost like trying to predict the weather a year from now. There are just too many variables to know for sure.
You're right. It is a very complex issue. But I think that's precisely why it's so important for us to have these discussions. We, as a society, need to be engaged in this process and demand that AI development aligns with our values as human beings.
It all comes back to being intentional, right? It's not just about what AI can do, but what we want it to do. And that all starts with, like we were saying earlier, having a basic understanding of how this technology works.
That's it. The more we understand about AI, its potential, and yes, its limitations, the better we'll all be at figuring out how to use it responsibly.
Okay, so back to Claude and its computer using skills. We talked about how Anthropic made this happen with that special API, but what about the practical side of things? I mean, what does all of this actually look like in the real world?
Yes. Now that's where things get interesting.
We've been talking about Claude and its ability to actually, use computers, but I have to admit, it's still a little hard to wrap my head around what that actually looks like in practice. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say you need to book a flight, right? So instead of having to go to like a million different websites, clicking through all those endless pages, you just tell Claude, find me the cheapest flight to, I don't know, Paris next month.
Okay. And then what? Claude just does it, like it just books the flight for you.
Basically, yeah. Claude can access the internet, you see, so it navigates those websites, it can compare prices from all the different airlines, and even fill out all your information to actually make the booking. It's like having a personal assistant, but just for all those annoying digital tasks that nobody wants to do.
Wow. So no more spending hours comparing airfares and trying to figure out which hotel website has the best deal. That's incredible.
That's the idea. But it's bigger than just convenience, I think. Imagine all those tasks that are just like incredibly repetitive and time consuming, especially in a work environment. Claude could automate data entry, generate reports, even schedule meetings. It would free people up to focus on, the more creative aspects of their work.
It's like everyone having their own personal team of interns that never sleep or complain.
That's a good way to put it. But I think there's an even deeper implication here, one that goes beyond all the practical stuff we've been talking about. The fact that an AI can interact with the digital world just like we do, well, it changes things. It changes the whole relationship between humans and AI.
I see what you mean. Having AI generate text or, answer questions is one thing, but seeing it actually doing things in the digital world in a way that only humans used to be able to, that's different.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the bigger picture. As AI gets more advanced, more versatile, more integrated into every aspect of our lives, we really need to be thinking about the consequences.
Like it's not just about what we can do with AI, it's also about what we should do with it, right?
Precisely. As the technology keeps evolving, we need to be having those tough conversations about ethics. Like, for example, how do we make sure that this technology is used for good? How do we prevent bias? How do we ensure that AI benefits all of humanity, not just a select few?
Big questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers. But I do think we need to remember that we're not just along for the ride here. We have a voice, and we need to use it. We have a responsibility to shape the future of AI.
I completely agree. The more informed and engaged we are as a society, the better. We need to make sure that AI develops in a way that aligns with our values.
Well said. Well, this has certainly given us a lot to think about. AI using computers. It's both exhilarating and a little terrifying all at the same time, wouldn't you say?
It certainly is.
As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to break it all down for us.
Happy to do it.
And to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep. We'll catch you next time.